Thank you for sticking around. It's absolutely my pleasure to be here, and thank you, Anthony, for the invite. There's been a tremendous amount of discussion today, and I'm glad to see it's moved on beyond whether or not this industry is innovative or should be innovative to how do we actually develop paths forward to doing that. And so when I chatted with Anthony about this talk, he said, keep it short and really give us a case study example of how research can really impact value and change this sort of dialogue. And so what I want to do today is sort of give you a sense of what we're doing at Lassonde. I've been director now for 2 years, and we've been really trying to refresh and engage industry and listen to what industry sees as the way universities can add value. But we've been doing that within the university as well. Let's see if I can. Okay, so one of the things we realized, and Rachel Wallace is with me today, my Associate Director for Strategy and Development, was that listening to industry, there was a disconnect between what universities thought we were doing that added value and how that was perceived by industry. And when we started to think about pipelines, and I've heard a lot about innovation and technology, but there's a disconnect between what's the pipeline that feeds that. You must have new data, and you need the right kind of data to really generate innovation. And so when we started to look at what universities do really well, we are in that sphere of sort of root causes. How do we look at mechanisms and processes? And that's been a traditional university focus. And oftentimes it stops there, which means that it's not making it out, it's not being translated, it's not fueling industry innovation. And so one of the things we've been really looking at is not just disrupting industry and trying to help them build a pipeline that's robust, that will fuel new knowledge for innovation, but also that we're thinking about that within the university itself. And so within Lassonde, we've really broadened out our ideas about how we do this, and this is largely in part because we've been listening and having a lot of conversations with industry. And I'll talk a little bit more about the global mining initiatives towards the end, but I really wanted to sort of give you an example of how we've been doing this on the ground. I've heard a lot about this as well. Right, so we're in the technology age or the information age, and I think this idea about data is the currency to innovation is absolutely spot on. We must collaborate to innovate. In order to understand, to develop new frameworks of knowledge, it's going to have to be multidisciplinary, but it's also we need ways to integrate and coordinate that information. And other sectors are already recognizing this. I was just recently at Dassault Systems, who is a 3D sort of platform. Everybody had at its core that recognition that not only is science important, it is essential for their business models going forward because there's so much multidisciplinary complexity to the challenges we're facing in industry, and you need a way to move that into translated products. And so P&G is a great example of this, the Connect and Develop program. They realized that their new products could not be, for them to survive and to be successful, they couldn't do it on their own. They needed an ecosystem. They needed to work with university researchers. And in fact, they've been more successful since they've done that. And so this is happening across sort of healthcare, across bionics, across big data. It's out there, and I think, particularly to Nadine's point, there are models that we can adopt. We don't have to invent wheels. And so as we started to think about this, we must collaborate to innovate. And really, this is about evidence-driven solutions, science-based solutions that give you essentially confidence that decrease your risk. So we need leading thinkers who can integrate and extract effective new understanding that will drive that innovation pipeline. We need those multidisciplinary pipelines to be developed. And this is non-traditional knowledge outside of mining engineering. And we're starting to see some of this percolate through. And we need open innovation and collaboration. And I know a lot of people in the room are already thinking about IP, and I'm going to touch on that towards the end. But it also has to be a collaborative sort of incubation system where we're putting industry and researchers together, not only to identify what are the problems and how do we scope it, how do we drive it forward, how do we iteratively continue to make sure we're on that path to drive new solutions that are needed. What we've created at the Lassonde Institute is something we're calling the Global Mining Initiatives. And this idea around research and innovation is to the point about, R&D that's being done well is thousands of people. We can never do that. Doesn't matter how great one university is or how great or large a company is. But we can do it if we globally connect. And if we globally connect the brightest minds and expertise, we then start to leverage and coalesce research efforts. If we leverage that global expert network, we're going to accelerate our ability to truly address the grand challenges, to develop the new knowledge we need that will lead to solutions. And we will lead by doing that. So we connect, we leverage, and we lead. And we do that by essentially, as Rachel likes to say, parking our egos at the door. It's not about that. It's about driving value. Everybody's in it together. U of T isn't necessarily always the lead institution. And certainly we're not the lead in all expertise. We want to make sure that open innovation ecosystem is there. And so if we look beyond the symptoms to the cause, and this is something really where university researchers know how to do this. Most of the times when we have a grand challenge, it doesn't matter whether it's in big data in pharmacare or whether it's in mining, how do we deal with water, tailings, governance. It means that we have a knowledge gap. And if you think about researchers, we are experts in figuring out how to find that new knowledge that allows us to get around those roadblocks that are preventing us from developing new solutions and tools. And I think progressive mining is one that absolutely understands that water is one of the most important commodities in our industry today. Currently, the industry on a global level uses about 9 cubic kilometers of water per year. To put that in terms that kind of fit scale, I start to lose a sense of how much water is that. We have about 3.5 cubic kilometers of renewable water every year in Canada. So globally, we're using almost 3 times that amount of water by the industry. Canada alone uses 1 cubic kilometer of that water. The volume of Lake Ontario is about 3.5 cubic kilometers. So you can start to see water is a massive component of this industry, and we know it is the most important commodity on the planet. I heard this referenced earlier today. I always go back to a farmer in South Africa who said to me, Lesley, you can't drink money, because he did not have a clean water supply to grow his crops, and his animals were dying. And I think this connection outside of the industry is one that's absolutely clear. Talk to any millennial, this is what they're going to talk to you about. And so branding this idea and saying that we recognize this issue, we are dealing with it, we will be leaders in water. Incidentally, water and water treatment is somewhere around a $9 billion a year industry, and it's growing. So there's real opportunity and appetite for this. And a lot of what we think about at Lassonde, and Nathan sort of referenced that there were a lot of sort of old professors teaching the same old thing. And I was brought into Lassonde 3 years ago. I work in water, I'm an earth scientist. We happen to use metagenomic tools completely outside of hard rock mining. But there was this understanding that the industry is much broader. We need skill sets and competencies that reflect the true sort of breadth of what this industry is dealing with. And so I think there's appetite for this, and I think more importantly, universities can play an enormous role in this. We got pulled into a project driven by industry, largely by Glencore, Sudbury INO, and through Hud Bay, who recognize that thiosalts, these sulfur compounds that are essentially generated in tailings, are a massive issue still for the industry. They have environmental impacts such as toxicity and acidity. Most importantly, we do not have effective monitoring tools that would predict when you're going to have a problem, and we don't have treatment solutions that deal with it. So this is liability and risk, and frequently when I'm called in to talk with industry, it's about their risk portfolio and this lack of knowledge. So essentially what we did, and this was an industry pull project, we put together a team, multidisciplinary, international, globally linked, and essentially very much incubated with industry at the table, helping us design the project, scope what the objectives should be, and continuously informing on those results. And I just want to give a shout out, if it'll come up. The Northern Miner featured this. We were funded in 2016. The Northern Miner did an article on us in 2017. We were the first natural resources project funded by Genome Canada, which is all about the application of genomics technologies. And there was a lot of interest, not only sort of in the genomics world, but also in the industry world about what the heck is this connection between microbes and mining. 3 sort of quick lessons I'll give you. Tailings are not just a geotechnical issue. Tailings are biogeochemically reactive. They're full of sulfur and iron. This, for microbes, is like a McDonald's. So every single water system you have is going to be full of microbes. These microbes drive the planet. So they're not just something interesting growing on a plate. They drive fundamental geochemical processes. They are your invisible engineers, and you know very little about them. So it's a massive opportunity if we start to uncover who's there and what are they doing. This opens up whole new doors to how you might do things more effectively. And so we put together a project that's really around science and very fundamental science, but leading science. And I will point this out, everything we're doing in the geochemistry and the metagenomics fields are at the forefront of what we would see in any kind of context. So we're head to toe with those people working on the oceans or on soils. All of the science we're doing is at absolutely the top of its game. But we're fueling that and funneling that into essentially decision-making and models for industry so that they actually can use outcomes. It's not just about a laundry list of, you've got some exciting bacteria in your system. It's more, what are they doing? How can we use them? And what we're seeing, and I'm very proud of this because I also am very, very aware, right? Research dollars are hard to get. Industry often has to fight for them in-house to get projects funded. We need to deliver and we need to demonstrate value. 3 years into the project, we've cracked the reason why the thiosalts issue remains. We've demonstrated that essentially the sulfur analytics that have been done to date are not capturing the entire pool. So a lot of the risk is essentially being flowed into the environment because you don't have tools to capture it. We know that bugs that occur in these mining wastewaters are absolutely important for driving reactions that are cycling thiosalts. Incidentally, they don't look like bugs from soils or the oceans. There is a distinct mining microbiome. This is incredibly exciting. It means that they're tractable. We can identify them. We can follow them. We're seeing certain bugs that are really important across all 4 of the mines that are in our study. So it's not site-specific. These are cosmopolitan, important organisms. And this is starting to set us up not only for new proactive adaptive management, but it's setting us up to use these endemics for biological treatment. And the more you can get away, as you guys know, from static chemical treatment, the better you're going to be in terms of sustainability. And I really wanted to point out the Canadian Mining Journal also featured sort of where we've gotten to date earlier this year. So I'm really very, very happy and delighted to see this sort of interest in how genomics is something that can really push new ideas and new innovation. So we took this idea, obviously what I do in my research is around water, which inherently is multidisciplinary. I've had to move out of whatever discipline silo I've been in because if you want to understand the system, you have to pull this together. And we've taken this to the large scale at Lassonde. And in the Global Mining Initiative, this idea that we're connecting the brightest minds and expertise around the globe, we're building these community catalyst projects. And right now we're looking at industry-wide challenges that require new knowledge. And particularly things around water, energy, and people, comments we've heard throughout the day. We know that we have fundamental knowledge gaps. And we can use this kind of approach and this applied research and investigation that particularly linking non-traditional knowledge experts that you require. You need those multidisciplinary data streams to come in to develop more robust models and knowledge that you can actually use to drive solutions. And I want to speak to this because I've heard this, and I used to think about this myself quite a bit. Innovation has to happen in an open, collaborative environment with coordinated efforts and approaches that drive towards common goals that can benefit the entire industry. It's not just companies who worry about IP and what does this mean if I'm sharing this. Researchers often think about this too, right? It matters in terms of who is first author on a publication or how am I going to get research money. But if you actually think about this, and this was a comment that I thought was great. This was made by Geneviève Berger, who is the chief scientific officer for Firmenich, which is a product company out of Switzerland. And she said, look, even 10% of a collaboratively developed new solution is worth far more than 100% ownership of a current inadequate model, tool, or product. And so this idea that open collaboration is the only way, and it's truly, I think, the only way. We need multidisciplinary data, and we need a lot of it to fuel platforms that can really drive models that are accurate and identify new solutions. We will all benefit. And this idea that it floats all boats, I think, is absolutely true. Another reality check I want to point out is that if you look at the cost for new knowledge, and I'm constantly asked to give massive solutions to very big questions for $100,000. It's not going to happen, and I'm not going to sell it to you and say, yes, I can do that. Timelines, and we hear this, university research is too slow. If you want it faster, you have to fund it appropriately. If you look at the time it takes to get a new drug to market and the cost, it's about 14 years and about $2.6 billion US. And they're looking at a 10,000 to 1 ratio, not a 1,000 to 1 ratio, as Nathan was mentioning earlier. So I think the reality, you've got these big challenges that are industry-wide. Leverage your risk, leverage your investment, work with knowledge experts, and you will have an ecosystem that can drive new solutions. And so this is my last slide. And this was just to sort of give a quick overview. But what I wanted to say is that so research and development and innovation are core to any university. It's our passion. We understand how to drive new knowledge. But at the Lassonde, we see this cross-cutting as well, not only to talent development. How can we not only give more competencies and different competencies to our students, but also how can we upskill the current workforce? But also thought leadership. And we've heard a lot of that today, sort of external ideas that can be brought into this industry. We don't need to be inventing every wheel. We need to be borrowing and adopting those that are already in other sectors. Catalyst Project 1, we're actively pulling the team together right now on water and tailings. If anyone's interested in joining that, please feel free to contact me or Rachel. If you have any comments or you're not on our list for the Lassonde, please let us know. We have lots of events and workshops going on, and we'd be delighted to expand our community. And thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.